And your character dies, and your character dies. You're all afraid of me now. As many of you know, role-playing games were originally based off of war games, and as a result, losing usually resulted in character death and the player having to start over, kind of like how most of the older video games also used to work. But as complexity in games has increased, the final death of a character, both in tabletop games and in many video games, has sort of lost its appeal. Modern tabletop games delve into heavy evolution of character personality, progression, and narrative much more than ever before. When a character dies, a lot of investment and work has been lost. That's not to say that death doesn't have its own dramatic effect in the game. It's good to have that fear of death that raises the stakes. However, introducing a new character can interrupt the flow of the game, and frankly, for most players, is actually kind of boring. They're suddenly playing something they're not really attached to, and attachment, as I mentioned in other videos, is something that takes repetition and time. This is also part of the reason you get some players acting carelessly and recklessly. If they are constantly stuck playing new PCs they aren't attached to, then they no longer really fear death. If your character dies, so what? What a GM really needs to instill into his players for them to have fun is fear. Here's how I find it's best to handle more modern games when instilling that fear. When it comes to PC death, I rarely kill off player characters. Only one of the following things will allow me to kill off a PC. It would have to have dramatic effect on the entire game, and would actually heighten the experience for all of the players involved. Or, the player did something pretty stupid and this is the price. For example, Pocahontas diving off a 1,000-foot cliff because they believe they're practically a god. When they really aren't. Occasionally I'll also allow PC death if the dice gods are really pushing it, but in those cases I often offer the player some sort of deal that would allow their character to return, albeit at some sort of cost. So if death is less of a thing to fear, then what is there to risk? Well, as the plots in game become more complex, so too do the things that they protect. Death of a character may not have to be there, but loss of the quest, important NPC, social standing, or material wealth are all things that can hit pretty hard. So give them fear of loss, but not necessarily death. RPGs these days do not have to harken back to the good old classic, "One wrong move and you'll die." So when thinking about loss, try to remember that there are other things in death that can happen. Part of what inspired me to think about how this is handled is the Fate Core RPG. In that RPG, loss is not only possible in failing, but is even a player-driven option. A player can concede at any point, purposely failing for dramatic effect, and then receiving a reward in the form of a fate point. This is because failure doesn't have to mean the end. Look at movies, for example. Let's go back to the classic Star Wars. Look at how many times they fail in those movies. Those encounters at Bespin are pretty much just failure after failure in one form or another. But this doesn't stop the series. It just builds dramatic effect and helps push the story in a new direction. So take a cue from how movies often handle failure and see not only the possibilities other than death, but how it can actually be a move to cause drama and excitement going forward. So keep inspiring that fear and have a good one, eh?